Hello and welcome back to those thrilling days of yesteryear. My first exposure to comic book heroes on film were the 4 films in the Christopher Reeve Superman franchise. A year after the final film in that franchise, Fox began airing the Superboy series. At the same time, the Family Channel was airing reruns of the Adam West Batman series from the 60s, as well as a new Zorro series starring Duncan Regehr. Nick at Night was showing the George Reeves Superman series from the 50s, and the Disney Channel was even showing reruns of the Guy Williams Zorro. But on top of that, being the late 80s and early 90s, I also had Errol's Video. Walking down the action-adventure aisle, I started seeing all these covers with guys I didn't recognize dressed as my favorite costume crime fighters in these boxes with 2 tapes inside. These were movie serials or cliffhangers. From the silent era through the early 50s, audiences would return week after week for the next thrill-packed episode in the adventures of their favorite heroes. There were mystery serials, western serials, science fiction, and of course pulp heroes and comic book characters, all left in dangerous predicaments at the end of each episode, which would be resolved the following week. I was hooked, and over the years I've collected a good number of them. So join me for a thrill-packed good time as we count down a few of my favorite cliffhangers. Number 10. The Dick Tracy serials. Like most people my age, I first heard of Dick Tracy through the 1990 film from Disney's Touchstone Pictures. Warren Beatty was my Dick Tracy, but through 3 movie serials from Republic Pictures, kids back in the day had Ralph Bird. Ralph Bird first donned the famous fedora in Republic Pictures' 1937 serial, Dick Tracy, where our hero faces off against the Spider, who also goes by the name the Lame One due to his gimpy leg. Dick Tracy was a huge success with audiences, and the next year, Dick Tracy Returns hit Saturday matinee screens. The 15-chapter serial has Tracy trying to bring down a major crime family, known as the Stark Gang. Audiences were hooked, and the next year brought Dick Tracy's G-Men, where Tracy tries to shut down an international spy ring called the Three Powers. The final Dick Tracy serial, Dick Tracy vs. Crime Inc. in 1941, brings a little science fiction into the mix as Tracy's newest foe, the Ghost, has the ability to turn himself invisible. This one stands out for me as it has the most memorable villain, and a mystery that will keep you guessing till the end. 3 of the 4 Dick Tracy serials were directed by Golden Age master of action-adventure films, William Whitney, whose 45-year career gave us everything from Roy Rogers pictures and hard-boiled detective mysteries to Walt Disney's Zorro TV series starring Guy Williams. The only downside to Republic's Dick Tracy are the changes made from the original Chester Gould comic strip. The FBI was still a relatively new agency at the time these serials were made, so it was common to make certain characters into deputized agents. And so, here, Tracy isn't a Midwestern police detective, but a full-blown G-Man. Also, outside of Dick Tracy and Jr., none of the other characters from the strip make an appearance. I see all 4 Dick Tracy serials as some of the best cliffhangers ever made, which makes sense given they were produced by Republic Pictures, who did it best. You always know with Republic Pictures that you're going to get the best special effects, the most action, and top-of-the-line fight choreography. Add to that the joy of seeing Gene Autry's sidekick Smiley Burnett in the first serial, or Charles Middleton, who went on to play Ming the Merciless in Flash Gordon, as the baddie in Dick Tracy Returns, and you're in for a good time. Number 9. The Crimson Ghost. Republic Pictures' 1946 serial, The Crimson Ghost, isn't based on existing source material, and is one of a handful that come to mind where the title character is the villain. It took 2 directors, both giants of the cliffhanger genre, to bring Crimson Ghost to life. William Whitney, with this being his final serial, and Fred C. Brannon, who directed primarily cowboy and sci-fi serials. For 12 action-packed chapters, we as the audience are on the edge of our seats as a skeleton masked figure in a long robe named the Crimson Ghost is determined to steal Cyclotrode X, which will allow him to disable all electrical devices. When the inventor of the device, University professor Dr. Chambers, is kidnapped and forced to wear a collar that makes him obey the will of the Crimson Ghost, only criminologist Duncan Richards can solve the mystery of who the ghost really is and save Dr. Chambers. Crimson Ghost was Republic's most expensive serial of 1946, and it shows. Not one boring moment in the entire thing. Great cast, and spooky horror and mystery theming throughout. Fans of serials and B-films in general will enjoy seeing a number of recognizable faces here. The Crimson Ghost's #1 henchman may not be instantly recognizable, but just imagine him wearing a cowboy hat and a domino mask, and you'll realize that it's none other than the Lone Ranger himself, Clayton Moore. Playing Dr. Chambers is Kenny Duncan, who fans of eccentric 1950s film director Ed Wood may know as Dr. Acula from Ed's 1959 horror oddity, Night of the Ghouls. Ed and Kenny were good friends, and in 1960, Ed even directed a short film for Kenny called Trick Shooting with Kenny Duncan, a showcase of his abilities with a gun. And in case you're wondering, Kenny was very popular with the ladies, and was known to friends as horror punk legends, the Misfits, stumbled upon an image of the Crimson Ghost while making flyers and t-shirts for a 1979 gig at Max's Kansas City, and the Crimson Ghost got a new life as the logo and mascot for the iconic band. Crimson Ghost has your typical fedora-wearing henchman and a young hero saving the day, but excels at building up the story. The action set pieces are another home run for Republic Pictures. The performances are solid. Those sci-fi looking props are a lot of fun, and the image of the villain is striking. If you're a fan of a good mystery or horror, or just a Misfits fan who wants to see the guy on their shirt in action, I definitely recommend The Crimson Ghost. Number 8. King of the Rocket Men. I seem to be showing a lot of bias in favor of Republic Pictures serials, but they really are that good. Republic Pictures released King of the Rocket Men in 1949, and it's another one directed by Fred C. Brannon. A shadowy figure known as Dr. Vulcan needs to take out every member of an organization of America's greatest scientists in order to conquer the world. When one of these scientists, played by James Craven, who went on to play a villain on an episode of George Reeves' Superman series, escapes the clutches of Dr. Vulcan, he has his fellow scientist Jeff King agree to try out the equipment they've been working on together. When Jeff King slips on their leather flight jacket fitted with an atomic-powered rocket pack, bullet-shaped flight helmet, and ray gun, he is Rocket Man. And through 12 death-defying chapters, Jeff must fight against Dr. Vulcan and the Sonic Decimator. I'm a massive fan of Dave Stevens' comic book The Rocketeer and its 1991 film adaptation from Disney. And knowing this was one of the character's biggest influences, King of the Rocket Men had long been one I wanted to see for myself. Villains kept in the shadow, rocket packs, death rays. It's every fun cliche of the sci-fi genre, and I love it for that. Classic film fans may recognize reporter Glenda Thomas, as played by Mae Clarke, who is forever etched into the history of Hollywood's golden age as the victim of James Cagney's assault by grapefruit in 1931's The Public Enemy. And in a third connection to George Reeves, Jeff King is played by Tristram Coffin, who appeared in 5 different episodes of The Adventures of Superman, usually playing the bad guy. While King of the Rocket Men didn't have any direct sequels, there were 3 early 50s cliffhangers whose budgets were so tight that they were heavily padded with rocket suit footage from this serial. Radar Men from the Moon from 1952, Zombies of the Stratosphere, also from 1952, and Commando Cody Sky Marshal of the Universe from 1953. Rocket Man's main villain, Dr. Vulcan, never made another appearance, but Zombies of the Stratosphere does feature a very young Leonard Nimoy as one of the Martians. There's a naivete to the understanding of science in this serial, but a rocket pack being controlled by up, down, left, right, slow, fast adds to the fun. For a high-flying good time, check out King of the Rocket Men. Number 7. Spy Smasher. Republic Pictures' Spy Smasher from 1942 is based on the character that appeared in Fawcett Comics from 1939 to 1948. As a wartime hero, he fought the type of villains you'd expect, like America Smasher, or head of a lethal spy ring, The Mask. Spy Smasher fought evildoers through the end of the war, but the comics didn't quite have the same punch in post-war America, even after a short-lived rebrand as Crime Smasher. Only a year after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Republic Pictures released Spy Smasher as a 12-chapter cliffhanger. Alan Armstrong, after supposedly dying in a plane crash, has been working as an American correspondent, donning the disguise of Spy Smasher to stop Nazi villain The Mask from destroying America. It's wall-to-wall action from the first installment as Spy Smasher is captured in occupied Paris by the Nazi Gestapo, but he's able to escape. After meeting his twin, a character created for the serial, the two stamp out one villainous Nazi plot after another. I had never heard of Spy Smasher until a customer at a bookstore I worked at about 20 years ago started talking to me about serials. I was told how Spy Smasher is often considered one of the best of the genre, and he lent me a few of his favorites. It's definitely worthy of praise. It's exciting, well acted, and has some impressive sets and props, especially that cool plane. It's another classic action serial directed by William Whitney, who always seemed to get the perfect lead actor for his productions. Alan Armstrong / Spy Smasher is played by Kane Richmond, who had a number of action roles on his resume, even going on to play pulp hero The Shadow in The Shadow Returns. As Spy Smasher, he has the ability and overall look of an action star, as well as the charm needed to completely sell it. Hans Schumm is menacing as The Mask. Hans was no stranger to playing a Nazi throughout the war, even landing a small role in Humphrey Bogart's Sahara. He arrived in America only a few years before Hitler rose to power, and despite being somewhat typecast as a Nazi, he actually took it upon himself to help exiled German Jewish actors find work in Hollywood. The Mask's top espionage operative is played by Tristan Coffin, having played the hero in my number 8 spot. Here he's, as I'm used to seeing him, one of the bad guys. A lot of the wartime shorts and serials tend to lean towards propaganda, but here the grand speeches about what we're fighting for are replaced with great writing and action. There's a reason that Spy Smasher is considered one of the best. Number 6. The Flash Gordon serials. When thinking about Universal Pictures in connection with the golden age of Hollywood, you generally think of their horror movies produced throughout the 30s and 40s. But they were producing cliffhangers as far back as 1914. Arguably the best of Universal's serials were their 3 Flash Gordon serials starring 1928 bronze medal winning Olympic swimmer Buster Crabbe. Alex Raymond's King Feature Syndicate comic strip comes to life in 1936's Flash Gordon. After parachuting from a plane down by a meteor shower, polo player and all-around athlete Flash Gordon, along with Dale Arden, find themselves at the lavatory of Dr. Zarkov, who plans to fly to the planet Mongo, whose collision course with Earth is causing the meteor showers. 1938's Flash Gordon's Trip to Mars was an adaptation of a storyline from the original Flash Gordon comic strip called Flash Gordon and the Witch Queen of Mongo. Here, Flash and the gang set off to investigate a mysterious beam of light threatening Earth's atmosphere and discover it's coming from Mars. The change in locale in this serial from Mongo to Mars was due to the success of Orson Welles' famed War of the Worlds radio broadcast. Then in 1940, Buster Crabbe had his last turn as Flash in Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, in which the evil Ming the Merciless is spreading death dust in the Earth's atmosphere, causing a worldwide plague known as the Purple Death. And Flash and the gang have to find the cure and stop Ming's tyranny once and for all. Though the trilogy had extravagant costs, over $300,000 for the first one alone, Universal did find ways to keep the cost down. Film buffs may recognize other Universal sets being reused. A laboratory set came from Boris Karloff's 1936 feature, The Invisible Ray, for instance, with some of the equipment clearly borrowed from Dr. Frankenstein. Turnabout is fair play, and some of the costumes created for Flash Gordon would later dress the Kryptonian scientist in the first episode of The Adventures of Superman, starring George Reeves, who coincidentally appeared in 1939's Gone with the Wind, which also had a brief appearance by Ming the Merciless himself, Charles Middleton, as man with stovepipe hat in charge of convict workers. Universal's Flash Gordon serials are some of the best known of the cliffhanger genre. Part of this is between these 3 and Buster Crabbe's 1939 Buck Rogers serial. One can see how much went on to inspire, or was directly lifted, by George Lucas for Star Wars. Along with George Méliès's Journey to the Moon from 1902, or Fritz Lang's Metropolis from 1927, the Flash Gordon serial should be remembered by science fiction fans for being among the first to take us beyond the stars through the medium of film. Number 5. The Green Hornet serials. Also from Universal Pictures, while not as recognized as the Flash Gordon trilogy, but certainly deserving, are the 2 Green Hornet serials from 1940 and 1941. The Green Hornet was a character created for radio dramas by George W. Trendle and Fran Stryker, the team behind The Lone Ranger. In fact, in the original radio show, the Green Hornet's alter ego, Britt Reed, is revealed to be the great-nephew of the Lone Ranger. The first serial, 1940's The Green Hornet, finds Britt Reed, played by Gordon Jones, taking over the biggest newspaper in town, the Sentinel, from his father, and using it to take a journalistic stand against the racketeering problem plaguing the city. Knowing there's only so much you can do as a newspaper publisher, Britt assumes the alias of the Green Hornet. Along with his gas gun, bulletproof car, and his sidekick Kato, they set out to take down the city's crime syndicate. The following year, Universal produced a follow-up, The Green Hornet Strikes Again. The cast stayed mostly the same, except for the Hornet himself, with Warren Hull taking the role. Hull was no stranger to playing pulp heroes, as he had played Mandrake the Magician in a 1939 serial, as well as the Spider in The Spider Returns. Hull opted to use his own voice for the Hornet, while Gordon Jones was dubbed by the voice of the radio's Green Hornet, Al Hodge. The Green Hornet Strikes Again finds that the racketeering problem is still going on, and once again Green Hornet and Kato set out to take it down. Strikes Again can feel a bit close to its predecessor at times, and the action isn't as strong. I think when mentioning the Green Hornet, it's not the serials or the radio shows people think about, but the 1966 TV series by the team that brought us the Adam West Batman series. And for good reason. Not only did it take a more serious tone than Batman, but Kato was played by Bruce Lee. While it's hard to top Bruce Lee, the original Kato from the serial, Chinese actor Key Luke, is immensely likable in the role, and is given even more to do in the sequel. In the original radio show, Kato is Japanese. But let's just say that in 1940 and 1941, nobody wanted to see a Japanese hero. So, Key Luke's Kato is Korean. While the Green Hornet serials may lack some of the more fantastical elements that fans of Cliffhangers have come to expect, they're still very enjoyable and do a great job at bringing these radio characters to life. Number 4. The Adventures of Captain Marvel. Republic Pictures was trying desperately to bring the first live-action comic book characters to the big screen, with their eyes set on the Man of Steel. It fell through in 1940, with that script becoming Mysterious Dr. Satan. The next year, they tried once again to get the rights to Superman, but were still blocked by the exclusive contract Paramount had that secured the rights to show the Fleischer Brothers Superman cartoons. So Republic decided to bring Fawcett Comics character Captain Marvel to audiences, and his 12 chapters of Daring Do began showing in theaters on March 28, 1941. Our story opens in the Valley of Tombs, where a group of American archaeologists have discovered the Golden Scorpion, a statue fitted with lenses that have the ability to harness the power of the sun. The men realize this means ultimate power, and since ultimate power corrupts absolutely, they divide the lenses among themselves. But one of the men wants that power, and he disguises himself in a black hood, calls himself the Scorpion, and sets out to retrieve the lenses. The guardian of the statue, Shazam, is awakened and sees the youngest member of the expedition, and only one who refused to help open the tomb of the Scorpion, a young kid named Billy Batson. And so Shazam gives Billy Batson the power to become a fully grown superhero, Captain Marvel, whenever he says the magic word, Shazam. Now only Billy as Captain Marvel can protect the world from the Golden Scorpion's powers as they've fallen into the wrong hands. While the story and plot move quickly, it's Howard and Theodore Liedecker's special effects that really set this serial above most others. A dummy was placed on thin guide wires for flying sequences, allowing Captain Marvel to soar through the sky above various outdoor locations. The Adventures of Captain Marvel is often considered to be the best of the genre, and while I wouldn't put it as my number one, It is really well done, has a great cast, and perfectly captures the comic book style adventure of Fawcett Comics' original hero. After receiving the film rights for Captain Marvel from Fawcett Comics, Republic faced the first challenge. They would need to hire 2 actors for this character. One for young Billy Batson, and one for Captain Marvel. For Billy Batson, the studio chose Frank Coughlin Jr., who was a child actor probably most familiar to audiences as an early member of the R-Gang comedies, and having played a young James Cagney in Public Enemies. Coincidentally, another young serial star, Douglas Croft, who played Robin in the 1943 Batman serial, got his start playing a young James Cagney in Yankee Doodle Dandy. For Captain Marvel himself, Republic decided to hire a man they had been eyeing for the role of Superman, before that production fell through. Tom Tyler. Tom had been quite successful as a silent cowboy star. When talkies hit, Tom was regulated to work in Poverty Row studio films. Eventually, Universal offered him the role of the Mummy in 1940's The Mummy's Hand, and after Captain Marvel, he took the role of the Phantom for Columbia Pictures' 1943 serial. Tom Tyler never quite achieved the fame he was seeking, and continued on in low-budget fare, including Ed Wood's 1953 TV pilot, Crossroad Avenger, The Adventures of the Tucson Kid. Tom Tyler passed away the next year at the age of 50, but his portrayal of Captain Marvel is still considered iconic by fans of comic books, and the serial itself is still thought of as one of the best. Number 3. Captain America. In 1940, Martin Goodman, the publisher of Timely Comics, which eventually became Marvel Comics, hired a young freelance artist named Joe Simon to create a new character. Joe Simon opted to have his friend and artist Jack Kirby as the primary artist on this new creation, and the tale of a small, weak man named Steve Rogers receiving an experimental serum to become a super soldier named Captain America hit the comic stands on December 20th, 1940. That was the origin of the character everyone knows as Captain America. But in Republic's 1944 serial, Captain America, we're introduced to District Attorney Grant Gardner, who, as his alter ego Captain America, fights a criminal madman known as the Scarab. The original Superman, Kirk Allen, was slated to star as Captain America, but had to drop out due to a scheduling conflict. Dick Purcell, who had starred in 1941's King of the Zombies, dons the rather ill-fitting dark blue bodysuit here. He does his best, but some people just aren't suited for tights. The Scarab, aka Dr. Cyrus Maldor, had led a successful archaeological expedition in the jungle, but when he received little recognition for it, while his colleagues became wealthy, the Scarab plots his revenge. This revenge comes in the form of a hypnotic serum that drives his former colleagues to the Purple Death. A different Purple Death than the one from the Flash Gordon serial. The revenge also comes in the form of various destructive inventions like the vibrator. Captain America narrowly misses being killed by a falling building thanks to the vibrator. Over-the-top and implausible scientific devices are usually one of the most enjoyable things about serials, but along with the vibrator, we get the electronic firebolt, robot trucks, and a perpetual life machine here. It can become a bit unfocused. It's a sloppy serial, which, given that it came from Republic, makes that even more surprising. The character's creator, Joe Simon, didn't even know it had been made until he saw it advertised in a theater marquee while in the U.S. Coast Guard during World War II. Still, there are excellent fight sequences shot in creative camera angles, and there's an overall dark noir feel throughout. And once again, I enjoyed seeing a lot of familiar faces. Lionel Atwell from Son of Frankenstein plays the Scarab. His main henchman, Bart Matson, is played by George J. Lewis, who was Don Alejandro de la Vega in Disney's Zorro TV series. And it always makes me happy to see John Hamilton show up. John, of course, played Perry White in George Reeves' Superman TV series. Making another connection to George Reeves here, actor George J. Lewis would also go on to play Native American in the Adventures of Superman episode, Test of the Warrior. Great Caesar's Ghost. Number 2. The Superman serials. I've made a number of connections to George Reeves throughout this video, though I still have yet to see the serial he starred in, 1949's Adventures of Sir Galahad, But it's time to talk about a different Superman, Kirk Alyn. When Action Comics #1 introduced Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's creation Superman to the world in 1938, it was a massive success. After 2 failed attempts by Republic Studios to bring Superman to the screen, it was Columbia Pictures that was able to pull it off with 2 serials, Superman in 1948 and Atom Man vs. Superman in 1950. The first serial opens with Superman's origin story, as a tiny Kryptonian infant is placed in a rocket ship and sent to Earth, just as Krypton blows up. The infant is found and raised by a farm couple who name him Clark Kent. Now in the big city of Metropolis, Clark gets a job as a reporter at the Daily Planet. But when trouble arises, he changes into Superman to fight evil. And evil comes in the form of Spider Lady, played by Carol Foreman. When Spider Lady discovers that kryptonite can harm Superman, she uses it to get her hands on a military-grade weapon more powerful than the atomic bomb, known as the Reducer Ray, that the US government asks Superman to protect. The success of Superman paved the way for a sequel, Atom Man vs. Superman. In this serial, Superman has to stop mad scientist Lex Luthor, here simply known as Luthor, who sometimes dons a sparkly gold helmet as his alter ego Atom Man. Luthor plots multiple evil schemes throughout the serial. Luthor is played by longtime character actor and frequent Ed Wood collaborator Lyle Talbot, who was not only the first Lex Luthor, but the first Commissioner Gordon in 1949's serial Batman and Robin. The production for the serials, the first one in particular, were taxing on the cast. Tommy Bond, best known as Butch from The Little Rascals, played cub reporter Jimmy Olsen, and remembered the 14-hour days on the set of Superman. Even Superman's star, Kirk Alyn, whose background as a dancer had put him in peak physical shape, was put to the test as he provided the majority of his own stunts, though all flying sequences were achieved by an animated Superman soaring into the sky, and then becoming live action as he landed. Both Kirk Alyn and this serial's Lois Lane, Noel Neill, who reprised the role of Lois in the 1950s TV series starting in the 2nd season, would team up again for a brief cameo in 1978's Superman the Movie, playing a young Lois Lane's parents. The Superman serials are just about equal. The first one has a stronger plot, while the second one has better effects, but it's clear why these characters are still so well loved by movie audiences, no matter who's behind the cape. Number 1. The Batman serials. After the success of the Superman comic book, Detective Comics approached an ambitious but not overly talented cartoonist named Bob Kane for a new character. Bob asked his collaborator, Bill Finger, for help, and it was his contributions that created the character we all know. Batman was released as Detective Comics number 27 on March 30th, 1939. 4 years later, Columbia optioned the rights to the character for a 15-chapter serial, released on July 16, 1943. Then again for another 15-chapter serial in 1949, titled Batman and Robin. Batman from 1943 stars Lewis Wilson as the Dark Knight and Douglas Croft as Robin. Both actors were the youngest ever to play the roles, and Croft, at 16 years old, is the only Robin to be age accurate to the comic book. Like with the Dick Tracy serials, Batman and Robin aren't vigilantes here, but deputized law enforcement agents. And none of the characters' famous rogue gallery make an appearance here. Instead, because we're in the midst of World War II, Batman and Robin have to go up against the evil Dr. Daka, a Japanese spy seeking radium to power his disintegrator gun. That is, when he's not turning middle-aged men in turtlenecks into zombies via a brain implant. While I prefer the 1943 serial to the 1949 serial, you do have to put yourself into the historical context in which this film was created. Lines like,
"Since a wise government rounded up the shifty-eyed Japs, it has become virtually a ghost street."
Or,
"I'm an American first and always, and no amount of torture conceived by your twisted oriented brain will make me change my mind,"
wouldn't really fly today. But J. Carrol Naish is a legitimately good villain. And how can you not love a bad guy who pushes a button at his desk and drops his malcontents into an alligator pit? I don't ever really find myself ever wanting to watch the 1949 sequel, which revolves around Batman and Robin trying to stop a villain named the Wizard. For one thing, I don't find the action or plot all that enjoyable, and I really don't like the recasting of its two leads. At 26, Johnny Duncan is a little too old for Robin. Just ask Chris O'Donnell. And I just like Lewis Wilson more as Batman than Robert Lowry. Though Robert Lowry does give us two more George Reeves connections, as not only did he go on to appear in the Superman episode The Deadly Rock, but George and Robert had teamed up for a 1942 World War II anti-VD propaganda film, Sex Hygiene. And no, it's not Superman and Batman fighting syphilis. Between the two Batman serials, the tights are baggy, capes fall off mid-fight sequence only to be back on in the next scene, they drive a sedan instead of a Batmobile, and all that questionable dialogue. But for all their problems, the influence can still be felt by fans of the dynamic duo. I would definitely recommend the 1943 serial over the 1949 one. There are a few plot elements that strike me as interesting, such as Bruce Wayne going undercover to infiltrate DACA's gang, and a fun cameo early on by Bob Kane himself as a newsie. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my top 10 favorite cliffhangers. If you'd like to be kept up to date as to when I release a new video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next time on those thrilling days of yesteryear.